All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shannon Scriven. I'm a career and education outreach specialist with Workforce Solution. I serve Pflugerville ISD, and today I am joined with Eduardo Contreras from Alcon DTS, the founder and CEO. And I'm also joined by David Wyatt, Senior Vice President of Elizabeth Christian Public Relations. And today we're going to talk about technology. How much will you need it for your business? Okay. All right, so to start off with our first question, I'm going to give this question to David first. So briefly speak about your education background and a little bit about your experience to led you to where you are today.
Sure. So I grew up in Austin for the most part, ended up going to University of Texas at Austin, got a bachelor degree actually with a studio art emphasis. So I had no exposure to entrepreneurship whatsoever. Got out of school and started working in nonprofits where I discovered the marketing discipline in the marketing department. And then about 7 years into my career of doing marketing and PR for local arts organizations, my wife and I went out and started our own agency and did that for about 12 years. And then about 2 years ago, we were acquired by Elizabeth Christian Public Relations, where I am a senior vice president today.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm going to turn the mic over to Eduardo. Can you share with us a little bit about your background and experience?
Certainly. So my background and experience is a little interesting. I will start off by saying that first and foremost, I started off as a college dropout. I did attend the University of Texas Pan American. I was studying pre-med with every intention of going into sports medicine. But after a year and a half, 2 years, I quickly realized that, I think I like working with computers a lot better than with sick people. So in 1996, I decided I wanted to move to Austin, and I explored the possibility of transferring into UT and changing my my degree plan to be computer science. But when I say I like computers, I like systems. I like computer hardware, network infrastructure, phone systems. I like all the integral pieces of what is in a business network environment. And the coursework that was in computer science was primarily focused on, coding and software development, which was not the area that I wanted to get into. So at that point, I decided that it was time for me to leave the university and begin my path down corporate employment. So I started working at Semitech. It's a great company, semiconductor industry. I started off as a PC tech, and with all the training and certification that they put me through, I became a systems administrator and really built that solid foundation of technology that gave me the baseline that I would leverage later in life. That was probably the late 90s. And from a personal experience level, whenever I would go out to my optometrist, my dentist, my buddy's retail shop, half the time I walk into these shops, I'd always hear, "Hey, the system is down. The system is down." Like, well, okay, what does that mean? Like, well, the fax machine isn't working. We can't get to the internet. The sales terminal isn't working correctly. He's like, you know computers, can you help us? Like, well, I can take a look, right? So I would take a look and see that, yeah, I could fix that. I knew the systems. So it was a pretty straightforward and easy thing for me to do. So once all that was done, I would ask, hey, so who installed your system? Who maintains this for you? And the answer I would get would always be like, well, I did it myself. Or my neighbor's son knows computers pretty good, and he came out and did that. But whenever I need help, he's just not available. So that's where I identified a niche. There was a target market that just wasn't being served. And given the tool sets, the training, the certifications that I had, at that point, I realized that, I had the ability to now approach this market and provide them with solutions that could be cost effective and that would allow them to maintain their operations without all these disruptions. So it was in 2001 that I decided it's time to leave corporate America and start my first company. And that's when I started Alcon DTS.
Thank you for that story. It was very interesting, and I'm pretty sure it can be very inspiring for many of our viewers. All right, so Eduardo, I'm going to point this question to you again. So what technical skills, like software knowledge, for example, and experience did you come into when you first started your business?
Okay, well, yeah, thank you. So my situation was, hopefully one that most small business owners would progress through, right? So my background was technology. I was working in corporate America in IT. So I had this solid foundation of technology and technology skills with software, applications, and systems. So when it came time for me to start my business, I already had a leg up because I knew what the technology was. I knew that for um, for my business to be successful, I was going to have a website. I was going to have to buy a domain name and a registrar and all these aspects of marketing to get my name out there so that my potential clients can find me, right? Working with the search engines and what is SEO, right? So I had that leg up from a technology perspective in the sense that I was able to do that. And then from there, as a business owner, you have to identify the right tools and platforms for your line of business applications. So being in the service industry and working with these customers of ours that we were going to be their help desk, I needed a software platform that could do, intake for service calls, service tickets, management. I needed to be able to have a CRM database so I can manage my customer information, my contact, how do I get in touch with them, and then also integrate with a billing platform and accounting. So, having that technical background allowed me to make the decisions of, do I want these tools to live hosted somewhere, also known as the cloud, that I want to have them on premises where I had full control of them, what were the pros and cons. So having those skills really helped guide my decisions and ensure that I had those correct platforms and tools in place. And then from a personal perspective, as a business owner, you have to be good at what you do. You have to understand, what are my potential customers going to be expecting of me? So the experience that I came into this business with was that while I was in corporate America at Semitech, my day-to-day operational duties involved working with the engineers that were on site. These engineers were from member companies. So Semitech was a consortium of member companies in the semiconductor industry where they would send engineers to work on specific projects to really enhance and improve their R&D efforts, make chips cheaper, more effective, and so forth. But these member companies bought into specific programs. And if their engineer was not part of a different program, we had to ensure that those engineers didn't have access to that data. So these engineers came to Semitech and worked in the environment, and they really enjoyed it. They would be able to travel to another site and still access this data, and it was very smooth. So when these engineers went back to their member companies, Intel, AMD, Motorola, they would talk to their IT departments and say, look, when we access the data at Semitech, it's smooth, it works. Why can't we have that here at Intel? So the next thing I knew, I would have their IT department reaching out to us and asking me, hey, how did you enable that? What technologies are you using? We're experiencing issues with certain scenarios. So they would inquire and ask for me to go and visit their facilities and learn their environments and walk them through scenarios to identify what is the right platform, what is the right software, how would you go about deploying this to your user base. So they were my clients and I was a consultant. So that really cut my teeth on how to interact with these clients of mine, discover what their needs are, come up with a solution that fits their budget and their timelines and their skill sets, and then be able to deliver it. So that right there, having that understanding, having that experience is really what helped me start Alcon DTS the right way and have the right experience and set the right expectations with my customers.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. David, I'm not going to switch this question over to you. What technical skills did you have coming into the field?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, differing from Eduardo, I sort of, in my line of work is less technical and specific and more about just sort of wielding technology, but I would say, no matter what kind of business you're in, especially when you start, you're the chief everything officer. So you've got to figure out accounting, your website, all that stuff, billing, how do you keep up with your customers? How do you keep up with your employees eventually, all that sort of stuff. And so I would say, for me, it was more about an aptitude and inclination towards technology. So I had an openness to it. I had a general curiosity and enthusiasm about it. And so I generally just said yes to whatever came down the line. If it was Photoshop, or if it was, how to figure out a Mac, how to upgrade something. When cameras went digital, it was like, can you do the digital camera? I was like, yeah, I don't know how, but I'll figure it out. I'm curious enough. I know I can't really break it, so why not? For me, I've always used technology as a means to an end, because it's about networking, it's about communicating, it's about branding, and that's something that every business owner is going to need good IT, certainly, but they're also going to need to be able to use LinkedIn or keep up with people. For me, business is built on relationships, and relationships are not transactional in reality. And so I've found that if I can kind of use all the different kinds of technology to reinforce those real relationships, caring about people, following up with people, keeping track of their interests and what I can sort of offer them, and the technology sort of gets out of the way, So for example, if I'm keeping up with new business prospects, people that I want to hire us, I don't use a whole lot of HTML and graphics and, enhanced hoops and interfaces. I just try to email them and say, how are you? This is something I remember about you. So I think sometimes it's knowing the technology, but also knowing what technology to sort of like leave on the table and not have muck up your business. Other than that, I've just sort of tried to stay enthusiastic and interested in it. I will say, when I was working in-house, and Eduardo, you might relate to this, if you're too knowledgeable and too able, it's good to be the go-to person, but sometimes you can take something on and then you end up like that becomes your responsibility for no extra, pay or glory or what have you. So you do have to be mindful of it, but generally a curiosity about technology and an aptitude for it will just kind of serve you well and has served me well in getting further into my career.
Thank you. Thank you both for sharing. All right, and moving on to the next question, David, I'm gonna put this question on you. So how would a prospective entrepreneur know if they have an idea worth pursuing as a business venture?
Yeah, so I've, launched and sold a business. I've also done business plans for businesses that didn't work out. And that's part of the function of doing a business plan, is kind of taking yourself through the process and seeing if there's actually a pathway there. One thing I did way back right out of college is delivered flowers, for somebody for a living. And this is before GPS. And so I would know like where I wanted to get in town, but I didn't want to sit at a red light. So it always just I developed this navigational philosophy of go where the green lights take you. And it's something that has sort of morphed into this business philosophy of, where there's interest, where there's appeal, where you find people find value in you, go towards that. You might have this idea of wanting to, go for this target demographic or this, this innovation or this idea, but you can't force it. You have to really listen to what the marketplace wants and serve that need. There's big examples of people with a wild moonshot of an idea and no one's doing that, and they get millions of dollars of funding and work for years at no profit. But realistically, most entrepreneurial ideas are just things you roll up your sleeves and you've got to make revenue month one. You've got to get out there and pay your rent. So I would say, getting out there and, listening, working hard, proving your worth again and again, always innovating. I think one of the I can sort of say as a recovering entrepreneur, one of the downsides of entrepreneurship is that you can put in every waking hour. So you could work 20 hours a day. And a lot of ideas you can sort of barely make work at 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. But the hard thing is to do it with balance. So I think this is another difficult thing, is you might be able to burn the candle at both ends for 6 months or something like that early on. But ultimately, your idea has to be sustainable in order to be worth pursuing. And so, you know, being very aware of what kind of resources you're putting into it. And especially, you know, not everyone has an entrepreneurial mindset. And that's a good thing. That's what makes it a special thing to get out there and strike out on your own, willing to take risks, willing to think creatively. But as you start hiring up, you need to realize that your idea can't be reliant on everyone having the same motivation as you, mindset, creativity, contact database. It needs to be scalable in a way that other people can do some more perfunctory sort of things, because for just about everyone except for you, it's going to be a job. They're going to come do it for a year or 3 or 4 years, and they're going to move on. They're not going to, you know, it's not going to be their life's work. And so I think that's another sort of litmus test as you think about an idea, is you're the big dreamer, and that's a great thing. You may always be the big dreamer for the company, but is it going to be sustainable and scalable with people that are just sort of there to do their piece of it? So that would be another piece as well.
Thank you for sharing, David. You made some really good points, and I like the analogy of the green light.
Yeah.
Go where you pursue. All right, Eduardo, I'm going to turn the question over to you. What, how would a prospective entrepreneur know if they have that right business venture?
Certainly. So, you know, this is where I differentiate small business ownership from entrepreneurship, right? So I started off as a small business owner. And to me, a small business owner is an individual who goes into an established field with established products and an identified customer base, right? You already know what you're doing. You're not creating something new. You're just doing it better, right? Whereas when you're an entrepreneur, you have an idea. And this idea potentially is going to be really high growth. It's high risk because nobody's potentially ever seen it before. And you don't necessarily have an identified market. You need to go figure out who even wants this thing. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread in my mind, but nobody wants it. How viable is it, right? So, and then you got to think about, you know, is the idea worth pursuing? You have to go into any business venture understanding that less than half of new businesses make it past year 5. So first and foremost, you have to think about the numbers. You have to be comfortable with that, knowing that the odds are kind of stacked against you. So from there, I would say, you know, if you're really interested and you say, I'm going to do this, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm going to pursue this business venture, do a market analysis, right? Who is your potential target customer and do they want what I'm offering? Because as an entrepreneur, you have an idea. You need to sell that idea. You start off with a market. Who's going to buy this? And then from there, once you said, you know what, I've talked to my friends and family. I've told them about my purple widget. They said that this shade of purple wasn't right. They wanted this other shade, and I can make that happen. And it's got these 20 features, and I think those are the features that everybody needs. But they said 18 of those features are useless. Okay, well, I found a way to make a 5-feature purple widget that now works for them, and they're willing to pay for it. Once you've identified that, so my idea seems good, there's a lot more to it. You're not ready to start. Because now what you really need to do is build a solid business plan. Because that business plan is going to be your guide for all the other required components of your new business venture, right? It's going to, in that business plan, you're going to indicate who your target market is. You're going to want to show what the organization will look like, right? What's it going to cost to deliver this, to produce this? How much time do I need to run and how much do I need to sell to create a profit? Who are the team members going to be? Who's going to be on my board? Who's going to be my COO? How do I attract them, right? Having a proper business plan allows you to do so. And once you have all that figured out, as an entrepreneur, the next thing, which is probably the most critical thing, is where do I get money from? Your business plan is what you're going to show to friends and family. Hey guys, I need you to invest in me because if you don't invest in me, how are they going to invest in me? And once you actually make it to venture capitalists or private equity, that's one of the first things they're going to want to see. Let me see your business plan. And in that business plan, they want to see how much is it going to cost, and when do I get my money back, and when do I start making money. So that's definitely what needs to happen as you prepare and decide if that idea is really a worthy business venture. As I said, I started off as a small business, and I basically rode that success. I was very fortunate, and I transitioned that into entrepreneurship. So now as an entrepreneur, I am working with other entrepreneurs with their ideas. And they'll come to me and say, hey, we're looking for investment, we're looking for participation. Just recently, I would say 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, I had a very impressive startup approach me. The CEO came to me and said, I have this wonderful idea. Here's my business plan. Here's all the market research that I've done. I have patents. I put money into this. He was so prepared that I couldn't help but be impressed. And the target audience, the demographics, the social causes that he's addressing led to me making the decision that that was a startup business venture that I wanted to participate in because he was so prepared. So how would a prospective entrepreneur know is do your work, get the business plan, and see if those friends and family and peers and team members that you're approaching buy in. Because if you don't have their buy-in, your business will never be worth pursuing.
That's a very good point to make. Reach out to those friends and families first and to get their opinion and get their help as well. All right, so let's go ahead and go to our next question. Eduardo, back to you. So do you believe that if someone were to be starting a business, that they would need to go to business school to be fully prepared?
Well, that's an interesting question for me since I dropped out of the University of Texas. Well, you know, I was very fortunate to have success in small business, right? And then I was able to translate that into entrepreneurship, as I said. But as my wife loves to remind me, you know, I'm the exception, not the rule, right? So that was really not a reasonable path that most people should expect. You know, we have 3 young children, and she wants to make sure that they understand that going and getting properly prepared is the best thing you can do for whatever you decide to do in life. If that's small business ownership, entrepreneurship, or going down a career path, being a doctor, being a lawyer. Preparation is key. You know, so with that, you know, I do feel that as some of you decide to go down the path of small business ownership or entrepreneurship, you really should strongly consider going to some form of a business school, or at a minimum, participate in some of these business education programs. You know, because going to business school with these programs, you know, you'll get that solid foundation and the confidence, credibility even, so that when you're ready to launch your first business venture, your peers and the groups around you will have that confidence in you, right? Because you have that foundation. And it'll teach you basically how to start a company from the ground up. How do you scale it? How do you grow your team? How do you retain your team? How do you attract customers? How do you market your customers? How do you run the accounting side? You know, there's so much to a business that, you know, you can be the best widget maker, but widget making is going to be 25% of what you do. And eventually even less. Because one of the things that I always say is, as a business owner, you need to grow your business to the point to where you're no longer working in your business, you're working on your business. Okay, that's a key part right there. You got to get it there. So, you know, in my experience, you know, I started my company in 2001. I was 25 years old. I did not have formal business education. So I learned through the hard way, bumps and bruises along the way. It was definitely quite the experience. And, you know, maybe it was that naive part of me that got me through that, because it was tough. Had I gone and attained some formal level of business education, I do feel that, I wouldn't have had to endure a lot of those mistakes, a lot of those sleepless nights. I mean, you're going to have sleepless nights as an entrepreneur, but at least if you have a better understanding of what's actually happening and how you overcome some of those obstacles, you have a little more confidence and more rest. But yeah, as an entrepreneur or business owner, expect plenty of sleepless nights, payroll, bills, vendors, clients, everybody. So, had I gone to that business school and not suffered through some of those mistakes, I could have built my company faster. I could have built it bigger. It could have been much more dynamic from the get-go. But, really, I do feel that, as a business owner, you will make mistakes regardless. Business school helps you overcome them. But you also have to realize that small businesses don't always recover from their mistakes. So just be aware of that. And some of the programs that exist, and I'll mention the one that I participated in, it was about 7 years ago. There was a program put on by the SBA. It was called Emerging Leaders, and it was done in conjunction with a local chamber of commerce. And in that program, it was composed of a bunch of CEOs. There was about 20 of us. And each of us was very successful in the area of industry that we were in. There was gym owners, there was restaurateurs, there was IT services company and myself. And all of us had been in business for X amount of years and were generating X amount of $1 million per year in revenue. And it put us in a room and went through a very specific training to where it exposed us to areas of our businesses that we just didn't fully understand or simply weren't good at, right? So it taught us how to identify those areas and how to overcome those challenges, right? So me, I'm a technical guy. I wasn't very good at sales and marketing. I didn't understand that I really needed to have a strong relationship with my banker, my attorneys. But those were necessities. Those were deficiencies that I had. And I was just getting by the skin of my pants, right? The best that I could to get to where I was. So as you go through this curriculum and you learn these different processes and aspects of business ownership, you get the confidence and you know what you didn't know before. So now you know what questions to ask. You know how to go and seek the assistance that you didn't even know you needed. So to sum it up, yeah, I do think that in order to get that leg up and get the best chance of success in business, you should either go to business school or find a great business program to participate in.
Thank you for that advice and that insight, Eduardo. All right, David, do you believe someone needs to go to business school to be fully prepared?
Yeah, I'm really in full agreement with Eduardo. I don't know if you have to go to business school, like a 2-year or 4-year tuition situation, but there's really no reason not to take advantage. I mean, you all have some wonderful services. There's, one-off classes you can do on your own time, especially right now. It's a great time to be taking part in conferences, panels, continuing education, and, learn on someone else's dime. Go work for a small business where you can see how their reality is. Learn on their dime, but there's no reason to prolong the suffering, to take 10 years what you could learn in 2. So I would definitely say do that. And also, find a mentor, find someone that is a little bit further down the road who you can be really honest with. Something that you don't often know about starting a business is it seems very glamorous, but it's very harrowing. It's scary. It's very isolating. You're always kind of tap dancing and trying to show the best face about how successful you're doing to friends and family and colleagues and college buddies and competitors. And really you're terrified, are you going to make payroll? Are your employees leaving? Are they stealing from you? Are they going to start a new business and put you out of business? Having a mentor can help keep your head on straight. And ideally it's someone that has been down that entrepreneurial path, maybe in the same industry. Obviously you don't want to open up your soft underbelly to someone who could damage your business. So someone you can trust, because you're going to have a lot of self-doubt. You're going to have a lot of questions, and you want someone that sort of complements your skill set. So I think formal training, absolutely. A mentorship is a really, really important thing as well to sort of, get a little bit of insight around the corner, so to speak.
Yeah, you made a really good point, David, about having a mentor. So I kind of have like another little sidebar question. Did you guys have a mentor when you were in the process of trying to start your business? And if so, like for our high school students, who would be a mentor for them? Could it be a teacher or a family member?
Yeah, I would say, I went to SCORE, which is retired business people that are sort of giving back their time. And I think my mom told me to go, and I was sort of dragging my feet, and I went, and most of it was very, it was sort of like 101 sort of stuff. But one thing the guy told me, and he didn't know anything about marketing or PR at all, but he told me one thing. He's like, what problem are you trying to solve? Or what's your business? What's the value you're offering? And I was like, well, communication solutions and branding. He was like, no, you're just trying to solve problems. You got one more problem that your clients can't get to that you're going to solve. And he helped me really remember it at a high level that I may be passionate about the details and nuances of what I'm doing, but ultimately the people that I do work for just want to get back to what they're wanting to do, why they got into business. I've had other mentors along the way. I've also mentored people, and that's been a really rewarding experience. And I think the thinking is evolving. It's sort of a two-way mentorship. Even if it's someone younger, older, it doesn't really matter. You're sort of like, it's an exchange of ideas. But I've had some wonderful mentors. I would say, friends of the family are a good way to go, because there's that element of trust. But also, and this is good for planning a business, running a business, just learning about the field, is just sort of start keeping a wish list of people you admire. Follow them on social media, email them. You might find some that you see getting awards or speaking in a way that you think is inspirational, and you'd be amazed how far flattery can get you. Email someone and say, I really admire what you're doing. Can I buy you coffee? I'll send you a gift card and we'll do it virtually or whatever it is. Tell me how you got to be so amazing. Who's not going to say yes to that? And some people will oblige you for that quick conversation, but others, if you keep in touch, you'll cultivate a real relationship. Mm-hmm. And I'll have something a little bit more to say about that when we get into the last question. But I think having genuine connections with people will help turn the mentorship from being transactional to being like a true, it's like a true kind of fellowship that you create with someone else.
Thank you for sharing. And Eduardo, what is your insight on that topic about having a mentor, and where can these high school students find those mentors?
Absolutely. I mean, I fully agree with the idea of working with a mentor to give you some guidance. And mentorship can be found in many different locations, right? As David mentioned, it can be family members, it could be a peer that you happen to interact with, it could be at a seminar, it could be anywhere. But more formally, one of the areas that as an entrepreneur, I actively started participating in was in the startup world here in Austin. So there are startup incubators where basically if you have an idea, you have a concept, you started your organization, your business venture is rolling, you're trying to get it off the ground, you can actually align yourself with some of these incubators where they have accelerator programs. An accelerator program essentially will help you and guide you through the process of navigating the industry and getting to your product to market. Part of that is getting guidance on the tech, getting you guidance on the marketing, and actually pairing you up with mentors that either have experience in your field or at least are a good match and can guide you to where you need to be. And sometimes these mentors could potentially become investors in your startup.
That's really good. It's really, I think that's really helpful for our high school students and the rest of our audience. All right. So, Eduardo, back to you. What are the top 3 things that you would tell someone right now to consider when they're ready to become a business owner with a technology focus? And do you think that advice looks different if they are in different industries?
You know, it's interesting that you ask this question because I recently had a close friend of mine who decided that they were going to start an IT company in San Antonio. And he came to me seeking some advice and said, hey, you know, as a mentor, as a friend, you know, what can you tell me? What should I expect? And I did give him, you know, 3 good solid points. And, you know, the first one would be, you know, you really have to understand your market. Make sure you know who you're going to be selling to and understand what they do. And then the other one in our industry specifically is you have to be prepared to accept the fact that not all potential clients or even existing clients are going to be the right fit for your company. You know, having that revenue stream is great, but sometimes not all money is good money. And then the third thing I told him was that, you know, you really need to get off of your island and start seeking partnerships with other industry players. There's forums, there's groups that all are composed of, you know, your specific industry. For us, there's tech forums where you have other business owners, IT business owners who come together and collaborate and help each other. And of course, the last piece of that is industry groups and coming across those who work in areas that you don't necessarily focus on, but those areas are critically impactful to your industry. So I can go through those individual points. You know, when it comes to understanding your market, as an IT company, you know, we outsource IT to these small and medium-sized firms. And what that means is that we gain access to support all of their computer systems, their servers, their email systems. We have the keys to the kingdom when it comes to these environments. So I need to understand my clients to know, what does that mean? If we have this level of access to their systems, what do we need to be aware of? The first example that comes to mind is medical institutions. Medical institutions have to comply with HIPAA regulations. And what HIPAA regulations say is that as a medical institution, you're going to take in patient health information and you need to protect that information. So any vendor that you work with that has access to this data has to also be HIPAA compliant. Legally, if my organization was not HIPAA compliant, I could not work with a medical institution, right? So understanding what it is that your clients do will help understand if that's even a target for you in your business, okay? The second one was, you know, when you bring on a customer, you know, we learned early on that small customers, small companies, you know, they drive a small amount of revenue, but it can be a consistent revenue. But when you interact with these micro and small businesses and the business owner doesn't have quite that business acumen and they're doing everything they can to survive, they become very needy. They depend on you a lot for all of their support needs. My computer, hey, all of a sudden they're trying to plan a trip and they don't understand how to navigate a certain whatever, and they come to you. And all these different activities take up a lot of your time. And when you say, okay, you know, for you to grow your business, you're going to have to make an investment in these platforms. And this is what we suggest. And sometimes they're very hesitant and they don't want to spend that money. They want to instead invest in other aspects that don't create direct growth. So as a customer of ours, we're trying to help them and provide them the support that they're signed up for. But when you think about the amount of time that we're spending on them, the cost of the tools that we're leveraging to support them, sometimes it actually costs us money to deliver that service. So when we do that analysis and we find that we actually have 1 or 2 customers that are costing us money, we have to make the difficult decision to have a conversation with that client. And sometimes we have to fire those clients. So you have to be comfortable with that to make sure you understand that not all money is good money, okay? And then the third thing is, you know, back to the working with industry partners and finding those collaborative groups and working with other business owners who are in the same field and industry as you. They provide a wealth of information because maybe they've been around longer, maybe they worked with a specific tool that you're considering using, and they might say, yeah, it looks great on the outside, but once you actually implement it, it's got a ton of limitations, and it actually prevented us from doing what we were hoping to accomplish. So they save you that headache. So, being a part of one of those forums might be the best investment that you ever participate in. And then back to the other industry groups that you don't participate in, legislative groups. I'm a NFIB member. I'm on their leadership council. That's a National Federation of Independent Businesses. And what this organization does is they actually look at the legislation from a small business perspective. What does this legislation mean for small business owners? Sometimes, and hard to imagine, right? But sometimes our elected officials don't have small business owners' best interests in mind. So when they talk about legislation and new taxes and new local ordinances, and we want to protect this group, and how does that impact the small business? It impacts it greatly. But if you're so busy in your business and you just don't have the interest or the time to focus on legislation, you could really make some bad decisions when it comes down time to vote. Right now, this is a time to vote. And if you just listen to the candidates and say, well, that sounds great, but you don't take into account how those promises impact your business, you could be voting for something that could sink your company because you weren't aware of what that really meant and what that candidate stood for. So these organizations like NFIB do a great job of advocating for small business and explaining to the members, what does this mean? What does this proposition mean? What does this bill mean? And as a group, every NFIB member votes. Yeah, I think that sounds great. I think we should do this or we shouldn't do that. And the NFIB will then go and advocate on your behalf. So they are the champion for small business when it comes to legislative matters. And that matters to every company. So those are the biggest points of advice that I would give. But the one thing, from a technology versus not technology, you have to know all of these things. There's not much of a difference there. But the one thing that I would say, I tell every business owner is thinking about business ownership or has been in it, is you really have to think of your business as being this powerful marketing firm that just happens to have this great offering that everybody wants. Because if you're not marketing your business, the last thing you want to do is become the best kept secret in town. And that's what I tell everybody.
So true.
Thank you. Thank you, Eduardo. I liked your saying of not all money is good money. That is a very good thing to say. And David, what are the top 3 things that you would tell someone right now who's considering to become a business owner with a focus in technology? And would that advice look different for different industries?
Yeah, so great question. I think my answers would apply for technology-based companies or not. I mean, Eduardo is a lot more equipped literally and figuratively to answer the technology piece than I am. Again, it's not for the faint of heart, starting and running a business. So I think the first big question, and having done it and then sold it, no longer doing it anymore, you sort of, at some point you start off, you have a big idea, you want to conquer the world, or you don't want to work for the man, or whatever it is, you want to go out on your own and it sounds really exciting and you're going to be the captain of your own ship, and that's a great dream. But ultimately the reality, if you're at all successful past the first 3 or 6 months, it's going to be spreadsheets, it's going to be taxes, it's going to be HR problems, it's going to be payroll, nightmares. So I think ultimately, and this is where working with a mentor to really help walk through, or doing some reading, or both, to understand the reality of what running a business is all about. So I think the number one question and consideration is, do you really want to run a business for a living? You might like working on computers, or doing marketing, or making pastries, or throwing events, or whatever your idea is. But ultimately, if you're successful, you won't be the one doing that all day long. You'll be doing the other stuff to make the business go and run. You'll be paying other people to do the fun stuff for the most part. I think it ultimately comes down to problem solving. Do you like solving problems? Are you excited about it? If it makes you terribly anxious and unhappy, entrepreneurship may not be the thing for you. And I think, again, working with or for a small business owner will give you a front row seat to what that is like. Is it thrilling to you? Is it stressful to you? You really want to see how that's going to affect things. And it's going to definitely affect your marriage. It's going to affect having, small children. And, I think this is one of the hardest things in life generally. You don't know what you don't know. And so it's hard to sort of anticipate what your needs are going to be like at age 45 when you're 25. And I think this leads into my sort of number 2 consideration is this something that can grow and sustain your quality of life and where the business needs to go? It's not hard on the front end to make enough money to cover your internet and your desk and your one little shop or whatever it is and your pay. But ultimately, if you've got to pay for more people and warehouse space and insurance and all these sorts of things, it's got to be something that not only can scale to provide the pathway for those things, but you personally have to be able to keep pace with it. And so I think number 2 would be, can you live and breathe this industry that you've chosen? It might be cool, right now, or it might be of interest right now, but is it something in 20 years you're still going to be interested in doing? Or in 10 more years that you're still going to have want to do? And it's not just 9 to 5. You're going to be going to networking events for breakfast, and you'll be reading books about it, and you'll be talking about it. So it's really got to be of interest to you. And I would say, as a big caveat to this, not every passion, I'm a big believer in doing your passion and in finding real deep meaning in your work, but not every passion can be a business that provides for your livelihood or whatever your dream is. Some things should be a hobby. Maybe you want to have create a business for yourself that lets you give back in 10 times or 100 times the amount of ways that you could if you just made your business trying to give back, for example. So I think, really thinking through what you want to do with your life, what do you want to do with your time, are really, really important. And ultimately, capping off point 2 is you really have to care about it. You really need to care about the relationships, your word, the line of work, having integrity and following the ethical rules of your business. Give your work meaning and context and structure, so it's not just survival and doing whatever you've got to do, because that's definitely a trap that so many entrepreneurs get into. And this leads me into my final point, which is your brand is as your brand does. A lot of times in business, we feel like we're projecting this image, or we have a value statement or a mission statement. And those are all lovely things. Those are all important exercises to go through. But in reality, when you think about businesses that are in your life, it isn't their typography that sort of does it for you emotionally. It's their image is a reflection of your experience with them. So if, you have an airline, for example, they've got a beautiful logo, great marketing, cool commercials, snappy social media. If you have a horrible experience with them, or you read something horrible about them in the news, that's going to be your experience. So, from the very most earliest days of your entrepreneurial idea, it's how you behave. Do you treat people well? Do you call them back on time? Are you respectful? Do you listen? Do you care about them as a person? Those things are going to be what your brand becomes for your employees, for your early investors, for your very first customers. And if you can keep that on solid footing, do right by people, give a damn, follow up with them, genuinely know them and care about them, they're going to remember that. Whether your product isn't bulletproof or your service isn't 100% guaranteed, if you are there showing that you care and that you're responsive and that you really value them, they're going to remember that year after year. They're going to move from job to job, from company to company, and they're going to remember that you did the right thing, that you were responsive, that you paid attention and remembered something about them. So ultimately, it's how you behave as a person, as an entrepreneurial venture, that's going to build actual equity in your brand. You can build value in your products and services and in your real estate and your profit and loss statement. Those are all important, but for your brand to build equity and for your idea to really have a lot of buzz around it and momentum, you need to behave in a way that gets people emotionally invested. And I think look no further than the past 6 months, right? Businesses that treated us poorly or that didn't bother to make us care at all, they may as well have not existed. We didn't think about them. We didn't drive halfway across town to make sure they survived. The businesses that took time to know us and to care about us and give to our kids' schools or do a little something extra, you know, you couldn't stop us from patronizing their business at this time. And so ultimately, I think it's really about just making an irresistible experience for your customers, your employees, for the marketplace to really build value. And that in turn will give you meaning, which is sort of what it's all about.
You both made excellent points. I just want to let our viewers know that the Q&A is open. So if you guys have any questions you would like to ask Eduardo or David, definitely feel free to go ahead and type in your responses. And Eduardo and David, I do have another question for you guys. I know at our organization at Workforce Solutions, we rely heavily on social media to outreach our audience and to just keep people engaged. How has, especially since with COVID-19 happening, how has COVID-19 allowed you to utilize your social media platforms to outreach to your audience and to gain clients or customers?
So if you don't mind, I will jump in on this one, give you a chance to take a breath. But, you know, social media actually, as an IT firm, means two different things to me. One, from a business development perspective, that is now the new norm. That's how we go and we get in front of potential clients. That's how we seek new opportunity, because we're not getting those face-to-face meetings anymore. So really, when you would go out there and you would do brand marketing, you would go and find the different approaches to appeal to a new customer base. Really what we're finding now is that it's content marketing. You have to provide something of value, some content that your potential customer is going to benefit from. That way you get their attention. And once you have their attention, now you can follow up the conversation with a proposal for services. And how do you get that content in front of them? Right now in social media, LinkedIn is the greatest platform that we have at our disposal at the moment to be able to seek out new prospective clients or engage with existing clients. You know, not only is it us reaching out to them, but when they reach out, us responding to them and sharing their postings and liking and commenting on what they have going on, their new initiatives, their new product. You know, that way we're sharing them with our customer base. So we're definitely seeing the value from business development on that side and just kind of, you know, customer relationship. But then I take off that hat and I put on my IT hat and cybersecurity kicks in. What are you putting out there and what do people know of you? Now you're getting a much larger volume of email. And some of it is real, some of it's not real. Some of it is, hey, I'm really desperate for a response from that potential client. So you're more prone to potentially click on things that you shouldn't be. So, you know, we're leveraging a lot of our cybersecurity awareness training to ensure that our clients think before they click. So to me, you know, social media, this new norm where everybody's remote, everybody's working digitally, a lot less face-to-face, it's a double-edged sword. And whereas we live by it, we can also die by it. So we use it, but we also protect from it.
Well, I would love to add to that. I mean, definitely yes to all those points. You know, something that this past 6 months has been a really good reminder of is that, you know, no one really wants to hear your social media propaganda 100% of the time, right? So as an individual, as a small company, as a big company, the only people that really want to hear about all your wins and all your awards and all your services and all your people are your people, or maybe your parents or something like that. So you got to figure out what the larger sphere of interest, like where's your shared interest? So in our Eduardo's business, it would be security, or it would be like lowering risk, or it would be peace of mind or something like that. And so Eduardo could speak on social media all day long about those kind of concepts, statistics, trends, case studies, and that sort of thing. And that way, if someone isn't totally invested in his company, they can come in and say, well, I'm not really ready to follow or like or make that call or send my email, but yeah, I'm here for the conversation, right? And so what we learned, you know, a big lesson, or what we're reminded of, is we have to be stewards of the community. And so when the lockdown hit initially, we just pivoted to a place of hope. Oh, look, here's what HEB is doing, or look, here's what Tiff's Treats is doing. And aren't they amazing and good for them? And let's kind of boost the volume of that a little bit, or hey, everybody, this restaurant needs a little bit of love. And just we created some video content around, we're in this together. That was our campaign for a few months. It was really just about creating a sense of can do. We didn't want to we were in the middle of our 25th anniversary this year. And so we had all this sort of like chest thumping, we've made it 25 years stuff going on. We really had to set that aside and be humble and say, we're here to serve. We're here to make sure that everyone has a way forward. We're here to share the best practices that we've learned. So virtual events or things of that nature. Here's what we're learning. Here's the problems. And really, I think one of the interesting things that happened, and we've all seen this in our social media feeds, is all of a sudden you start seeing the CEO sitting at their desk, or you start seeing a Black Lives Matter statement, all these really earnest, frank, vulnerable conversations. And so it was an opportunity to sort of talk about some of the crises and some of the vulnerable places, but also the things that we all share. How do we humanize ourselves? How do we, again, because you're not having a warm handshake at a luncheon or seeing someone at a ball game or whatever, how are you creating that sense of that's why I trust Eduardo, he's a good guy, and so showing a little bit of your humanity is been a really, really important sort of thing, that you're just rolling up your sleeves too, you're trying to get through, you're trying to juggle kids and keep the Zoom meeting going or whatever it is. Those have been important lessons I think we can all sort of carry forward, that while out in the world we want to have the mask on, I think in the business world we're realizing that it's okay to have the mask off a little bit, in terms of like showing that we have cats that run across our keyboards, and we have things that we're concerned about. It makes people remember who we are. And I think at the end of the day, if you're there for people when they don't need your services, then when they do, they'll call you first.
Great insight, Eduardo and David. To finish off on that statement, I now want to share our social media information with the viewers. And before we close out for today, Eduardo and David, do you guys have any last final remarks that you would like to share with everyone?
I'm sort of talked out. I mean, I appreciate you all so much, and appreciate the work that you all do now and going forward. I think there was so many kind of early career opportunities that wouldn't have been possible if someone just didn't take a time, or if there wasn't a service like yours that was available to me. And so I definitely encourage people to use, workforce solutions services. And I just appreciate the work you're doing so much to really enrich the workforce out there. Thank you.
Thank you for the shout out.
And if I could just kind of piggyback on that, it's, there's organizations that really strive to help the community. And there's a lot of social causes, business causes, there's different flavors of organizations that you can participate in. And they're all essentially going to be worthwhile. You find your passion, you find the group that talks to you, right? Birds of a feather come together. And you do that good for your company, you do that good for your neighbors, you do that good for yourself, and you'll find that it can be very rewarding personally, for your family, and for your business. So just make sure that you work on those relationships, you work on things that matter, and you'll find that good things come to good people.
Thank you. Well, thank you both, Eduardo and David, for participating and being a part of our panel today. We very much appreciate it. And that pretty much closes out our session for today. I hope you guys have an amazing day.